On the 18th of May 2010, developer BlackRock Studio released one of my favourite racing games ever, but sadly, it was their final game too. First shown at E3 2009 with this trailer, the studio spent a further year prepping Split Second, or Split Second Velocity in Europe for some reason, for its final release date. A racing game of high-speed action in a similar style to Burnout, but with one key twist that keeps the tracks frequently changing on the fly and turns every race into an explosive and cinematic mad rush to the finish line. It's been 15 years since this forgotten gem was released, so it's time I celebrated one of the best racing games out there. This is 15 years of Split Second. Split Second was first introduced to me by its free demo on the Xbox 360. I don't think I'd seen any trailers or heard anything about it before I dived into my first race. And well, what a first race it was. Set on the airport terminal track, the demo really gave you a sense of what Split Second was all about. It starts off feeling like a nice handling but pretty basic high-speed arcade racer. For the first couple of corners, you get a bit of drifting going and bash into the other drivers, but then things just start to kick off around you. One of the first things you see is non-racer cars exploding and rolling across the road in front of you, taking out you and other racers. Quickly followed by a helicopter that drops bombs unsuspectedly, which causes things to quickly get out of control as the physics push you around, often crashing you into walls and other drivers. This is followed up by exploding petrol stations, buses, trucks, buildings, other vehicles but in small spaces that make them harder to dodge, and pretty soon radio towers are collapsing and the dishes are taking out the road ahead, and perhaps even you along with it. Before you know it, the ground is collapsing below you, forcing you into a completely different route, where there are even more explosions that cause part of the underground car park you are now in to collapse. Then a huge tower collapses into the ground and planes are crashing into the runway that's now been opened up by said collapsing tower. All of this is happening while you're fighting against the difficult and relentless AI racers who you are frequently crashing into and getting hit by, all of which are trying to kill you as much as you are them. And all of this can happen on the first lap of just the single track included with the demo. All of these explosions are purely attempts by you and other racers to cause as much destruction and mayhem as possible to take each other out for just a few seconds to get the lead. As you drift, draft, and take out other racers, you build up your power play system, a 3-bar meter where a single one will cause smaller explosions ahead of you that, with the right timing, can take out multiple racers, or yourself if you aren't particularly careful. Build up 3 bars though, and you can cause utter mayhem by causing huge explosions that change the track completely. From demolishing buildings and collapsing railway bridges, to sinking navy boats into the sea, along with all of the aircraft on top of them. The destruction can escalate very quickly, and even when you have played a track dozens of times like I have, it can still catch you off guard and make you regret pushing that power play button at just the wrong time, taking out you, but hopefully some others with you. It's not all explosions though. Sometimes a power play can do something as simple as opening a garage door or lowering a bridge that leads to a shortcut. Other racers can follow you through it, but if you or they aren't quick enough, the door can slam back down or the bridge raise back up, leading to a collision course to the back of the pack. That one crash can throw you multiple positions back, and that's because the AI racers are always keeping up with you. I assume this is to make sure every race is full of destruction, as if you could get miles ahead of everyone else, then it wouldn't be as exciting and tense of a race to the finish. By using quite aggressive rubber banding, something you'll see a lot of in Mario Kart for example, it means that the other racers are always around you. Whether they are right behind you or just in front, it's rare you will have your own space. Thankfully, although Split Second is tough, the developers found a good balance to make the races feel fun and fair. The other drivers will try to take each other out as much as they will you, and they frequently get caught by your power plays or just make standard mistakes, giving them quite a realistic feel. Still though, prepare to give it your all, as on normal difficulty or above, the races can be extremely close, and you will often find yourself having to repeat races in the campaign mode in order to get the gold, or even reach a pole position. It's not annoyingly punishing or frustrating in my opinion, but you always feel the need to drive at your best in order to win. Some might find it frustrating, but personally it just drove me to get better, and every time I go back to Split Second, my muscle memory kicks back in straight away. The campaign is also where you need to play to unlock Split Second's cars and tracks, with sadly some of them being DLC that for the PC version you have to hack into the game, as weirdly they were never sold, but it is in the code. There are dozens of cars to unlock ranging across muscle types, supercars and more chunky 4x4s. Each one gives you varying ranges of speed, handling and strength to help each car feel distinct. Throughout the campaign are multiple seasons in which you compete in a series of events to win the season, and then progress to the next one. This unlocks cars and tracks along the way, and these events consist of races, your standard race mode but with of course all those exciting cinematic explosions and power plays to give a unique experience. Elimination, same as races but if you are too low of a position at each checkpoint, you are out of the race. Detonator, the second best mode and essentially Split Second's time trials, where all the explosions will trigger as you race to finish a lap as fast as possible. Airstrike, a helicopter shoots missiles at you and the longer you can survive, the better the score. Air Revenge, similar to Airstrike, but you have to earn power plays to shoot back and destroy the helicopter as quickly as possible. Survival, avoid semi-trucks, dropping off exploding barrels, and survive as long as you can for a high score. There are a few more modes too that are fun, but nothing particularly exciting. So overall, what you are most likely going to be doing in Split Second is those amazing races, and maybe the occasional Detonator time trial. You can play online with others, but I do find the single player experience to be a bit more fun, as online you can end up miles ahead or miles behind the pack and not see many power plays. It's still a great time online though, and worth checking out on the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. But weirdly, the PC version has no online play at all, and since the game is 15 years old, there is of course no crossplay. And it didn't sell hugely well either. As such, you will be lucky to find any online lobbies these days for the console versions. There is also a PSP version which, considering the hardware at the time, does look pretty good, but it's not something I've played myself. Thankfully though, there is a great split screen mode for the console and PC versions that holds up really well and still manages to play reasonably smoothly even with all the destruction going on. What does let Split Second down though is the lack of tracks, of which there are only 12 of, including that DLC. And sadly, they're not even all unique. There is a lot of crossover between them, with sections of a track being a repeated section from another, with no variance in power plays or alternative routes for that repeated section. They are still fun, but it's a shame the developers couldn't come up with 12 unique tracks, especially since a lot of the environments look very similar to each other. I assume this is because it probably didn't have a particularly large budget, despite, strangely enough, being published by Disney Interactive. However, I still find each track an absolute blast to play, even if they don't really stand out from each other. Overall, it's the unique gameplay that makes it worth returning to over and over again. Presentation-wise, for a game from 2 generations of console and 15 years ago, it still holds up pretty well. It is sadly locked to 30 FPS, even on PC, but I personally never found it choppy or unresponsive. You are always moving at high speeds anyway, so you are more focused on what is in front of you than whether or not you have dropped a couple of frames, which on PC and backwards compatibility for Xbox Series X, it never seemed to do. The visual aspect of the destruction hasn't aged hugely well, but you will be too distracted by how fun the racing is to really care anyway, and the feel and impact of the destruction is still incredibly fun, which is what's most important here anyway. There's also a large variance in cars, colour choice, and even optional decals for each one that give enough individuality in looks to make it worth trying out multiple cars. Music-wise, it's a fitting soundtrack, but definitely gives off a limited budget feel, with only a handful of songs across the 12 tracks, and they all sound very similar. They do at least match the pace and feel of Split Second though. However, the sound effects hold up great, with impactful explosion and destruction sounds, a great Doppler effect as you zoom past objects, and a strong level of crunchiness when you or other vehicles get taken out. Its sound effects are very similar in quality to the Burnout games, along with a lot of Split Second in general, which should come as no surprise considering some of the Burnout developers worked on this title too. As someone who has bought this game 4 times since its release, with the Xbox 360 physically, PS3 digitally, digital again on Series X, and finally on PC, I would say your best place to play is the Xbox Series X, as you still get the online mode. It sadly doesn't have any FPS boost, but it does play smoothly at 30. There is a mod to boost to 60 FPS on PC, but I couldn't get it to work, and I've read several comments that it breaks the AI and some of the animations. So it's probably best to stick to the default here. Overall, for the easiest way to play, I would say the Xbox Series X, but if you want the extra track for free, then you can use a PC mod to get that too. You can also get the game very cheaply on PC, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. The Xbox version does also occasionally go on sale, so under £5. And well, that's all there is to say really. There isn't too much to talk about with Split Second, as it's more about the feel of the gameplay than the content itself. It doesn't have many tracks, and most of the game modes aren't particularly exciting. But the thrill of narrowly avoiding a crumbling building, an exploding truck, or a plane crashing into the ground as the other racers around you get destroyed never gets old. Sure, there's only 12 tracks, but you will want to replay them over and over again just to get that feeling of cinematic adrenaline as you speed over the finish line after an intense race of avoiding death at every turn. 15 years on from its release, I still think about it regularly. It's so unique in its overall feel. Sure, it has similarities to Burnout, but it is still distinctly its own. It sadly never got the sequel it deserved, as it was cancelled when the studio was closed, but I would buy it on day one if it's ever released. Especially as there isn't a spiritual successor to it either. If you're interested, you can find some of the sequel's development footage on YouTube, which I'll link in the description below. Split Second felt ahead of its time for the amount happening on screen back in 2010. So imagine the possibilities for it now, with a bigger track selection, crazier power plays, and a bigger budget both monetary and technologically. I know Split Second could once again become one of the most exciting and unique racers out there. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Phil, and I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. I hope you enjoyed this video on Split Second. It has stayed one of my favourite racing games for well over a decade now, and it sadly doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. To anyone who's not played it before, I urge you to go try it out right now. If you aren't already, please subscribe to the Pixel Tavern and leave a comment on your thoughts of Split Second. Have you played it yourself? Do you want to see a sequel? And how weird did you find that Disney published this? Until the next video everyone, thank you very much for watching.